I think we're ready to start. So good morning, everyone. We're all very excited to have you join us here today and thrilled at the response of people who registered for this post-session debrief. My name is Lori Brown, and I'm the Executive Director of the Connecticut League of Conservation Voters. We're a statewide environmental nonprofit that works with our state lawmakers and dozens, dozens of advocacy organizations to protect the environment. So many of you have attended our annual environmental summit, where we work with advocates, state leaders, and to identify priority issues before each legislative session. But today, we're going to hear from some of our legislative champions about the major environmental bills that were successfully passed during the 2022 session of the Connecticut General Assembly. So if you haven't heard, this was a banner year for the environment. Our state legislators really stepped up and leaned into the fight this year with resounding victories on climate. So many of my colleagues are on this Zoom today, and I just want to say that you are the champions and the leaders on key issues from year to year, and the League is just very proud to be part of this movement working to protect our land, air, water, wildlife, and climate. I also want to thank all the CTLCV members who also really stepped up to consistently respond to our action alerts, contacted their lawmakers on key issues, and we're always at the ready to support our work. So finally, also, I really want to give a big shout out. They don't hear this enough, but to the hardworking members of the press who are listening today. There was excellent coverage of the wide range of some very complex environmental issues this year, and your reporting was absolutely essential to informing the public about the policies and the solutions that we're all working to bring about. So you also do it in ways that people can actually understand. So very much thank you for that. So onto the program. Can you put the slide up, please, of the wins? Great. So in a moment, we're going to be hearing from Senator Christine Cohen, followed by House Speaker Matt Ritter, followed by Senator Tony Hwang. And they'll be giving you more details about the bills they worked on and what happened this session. But I do want to point out that anyone can submit a question using the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. All the speakers will be able to see the questions, and our moderator, Adam Wood, will also have some questions for each of them. So also, please just don't use the chat for your questions. They may not be seen. There may not be time to answer all of your questions. So we will definitely forward everything that's submitted into the Q&A to the speakers afterwards, and we'll do our very best to follow up with you. So as you can see from this slide, these are just the wins. There were a lot of them this year. There are, of course, other environmentally related bills that advocates and lawmakers worked on. But these are some of the wins that we really felt were significant this year. So 6 of the bills shown here will directly impact climate and air quality in the areas of clean electricity, clean transportation, climate smart agriculture, expanding solar energy, and finally, a bill passed this year requiring the teaching of climate change in schools. So hooray, and a big shout out to Representative Christine Palm and all the youth of the Connecticut Sunrise Movement that worked on that very hard fought win. 4 of the bills on here advanced the protection of state land, trees, and water, including the passage of the Long Island Sound, and passage of the long overdue State Plan of Conservation and Development. 2 of the bills here were about wildlife, so bears and horseshoe crabs, and 1 bill addressed pesticides, banning chlorpyrifos, and there's more to be done on that. And of course, 1 bill that CTLCV also tracked and has included as a win on voting rights. And this is an area where CTLCV overlaps with other areas in our mission to advance the pillars of climate, democracy, and equity, which we hope will penetrate all of our work on the environmental bills that we support. And lastly, if we get time, hopefully more questions will come about this, but lastly, the budget that was passed has major investments in clean transportation, open space and parks, smart agriculture, and much more. including the Office of Aquatic Invasive Species and other things that tie into some of the bills that you see here. But by far, the biggest takeaways this year were game-changing wins for clean air and our reducing of carbon emissions. And that has a direct correlation to public health. So Senate Bill 4, the Clean Air Act, makes monumental investments in clean transportation, and it does set new emission standards for medium and heavy duty vehicles such as trucks and buses. So some of our top champions at the legislature joined forces this session to pass the bill. Senator Will Haskell and Representative Roland Lamar, co-chairs of the Transportation Committee, and Senator Christine Cohen and Representative Joe Gresco, chairs of the Environment Committee, worked tirelessly to get this bill through. So I'm sure Senator Cohen will be speaking about the programs contained in this bill and what they will mean for every community in our state. And you'll be hearing from her up next. Another major win I want to be sure to flag is the passage of Senate Bill 10, and that requires that 100% of our electricity supply come from zero carbon sources by 2040. Now, Connecticut has made progress in decarbonizing our regional electric grid, but we must fully commit to achieving the climate goals as that our state put into the law in 2008. We are absolutely not on track to meet these goals of our state's Global Warming Solution Act, and time is running out. So we are going to need much more electricity than we use now to support clean transportation, heating and cooling of buildings, and new industrial uses. So that makes it all the more significant of getting to a zero carbon electricity sector from clean renewables and clean energy, all the more urgent. And we do applaud the chairs of the Energy and Technology Committee and the ranking members for making sure that this bill passed with bipartisan support. So none of the major victories this year would have been possible without the full backing of and the collaboration of the very top leadership in the House and Senate. And it was clear that the environment was a top priority for both Senate President Martin Looney and House Speaker Matt Ritter. They made every accommodation for time and the support to ensure that these and other environmental bills pass this year. So we cannot thank you enough. Our champs have set the bar high for future sessions. I believe this year reflects a turning point in the way that our elected leaders will be handling these critical issues, particularly climate change, going forward. And so now I'm just going to turn the mic over to my good friend and CTLCV board member, Adam Wood, to bring on our speakers and moderate the questions.
Great, thanks so much, Lori, and welcome, Senator Cohen. We're so pleased to have you with us today. I'm just gonna give a little brief introduction and then turn things over to you. But Christine Cohen is a state senator representing the residents of the 12th district, which includes the towns of Branford, Durham, Guilford, Killingworth, Madison, and North Branford. Senator Cohen is a chair of the Environment Committee and vice chair of the Commerce Committee. And she's focused her public policy energies on protecting Connecticut's environment, preventing gun violence, and strengthening our state's economy. Senator Cohen has helped pass so many new state laws, including one to ban single-use plastic bags, and led the successful fight this year to pass the Clean Air Act, Senate Bill 4, and so many other important environmental bills. Senator, you accomplished so much during this very short legislative session to advance the ball on so many important environmental issues. Tell us a little bit about what some of these issues were and how you and your colleagues were able to do so much in such a short amount of time this year.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Adam. And I just want to thank the Connecticut League of Conservation Voters for hosting this. It's really nice for me too, because it's sort of, you know, always the day after session. Yesterday, it's a time of reflection where we really sort of take inventory of how far we've come and some of the, you know, the wins and losses. And it's really nice to do this in sort of a public forum to go through it all and reminisce a little bit about where we had some exciting wins and where we might have fallen a little bit short and what we can do better. So we did have some really exciting wins and some equally frustrating losses, but all in all, as you just heard from Lori Brown, we had a terrific session for the environment. And while these bill proposals all become like children to me, I'm incredibly protective of them and want to shepherd them into adulthood or law. I was particularly excited about Senate Bill 4, Connecticut's Clean Air Act, and I hope all of you are too. In the wake of the TCI, the Transportation Climate Initiative downfall last session, we were all sort of hanging our heads low, but we kept on. And in particular, Senator Haskell and I had a passion for TCI in the Senate and really were, frustrated and getting together and talking a lot, as did so many advocates. And we weren't going to let it go easily. And then things really started to fall into place. In some in good ways and some in ways, through bad news that we were obtaining, but they really served as an impetus to take immediate action. So, some of those things were at the federal level. We really started to see they were taking steps to curb harmful emissions. And with the passage of the Infrastructure Act, we were going to see federal dollars, really the likes of which we hadn't before, to support clean air initiatives. But we needed to leverage those funds and provide matching dollars in a lot of cases, which Connecticut simply wasn't set up for. Around the same time, we were getting news of our inventory reports on our greenhouse gas emissions and recognizing that not only were we not meeting our goals with respect to the Global Warming Solutions Act, we were in fact going in the wrong direction, according to those 2018 inventory reports. Additionally, we heard we were getting buzz from the EPA, because at that point they hadn't officially downgraded us, they have since, but that they were going to downgrade several Connecticut counties from non-attainment to severe non-attainment for ground level ozone. And we know that NOx emissions from transportation really contributes to that ground level ozone. So, and just to clarify, when we move from non-attainment to severe non-attainment, it's an indication that we just simply haven't taken action. And that was something that was really, at that point, among environmentalists, very much recognized that we needed to do something yesterday. So if it weren't clear before, it was more glaring than ever. And so really thrilled that we could come together on this, and that our co-chairs, our House counterparts, Roland Lamar and Joe Gresco, really were coming together with us on this, and we wanted to make sure that we had all hands on deck and that we could move it forward. Additionally, it was, not many people know this, but the early numbers in Senate bills are an indication of priority. And so the fact that this was named Senate Bill 4 indicated that this was not only a priority of mine and Senator Haskell's, but a priority of the Senate Democratic Caucus, because having a bill be in the first, 6 or 8 bills is significant. But again, not too many people recognize that, but when we lay out our priorities at the beginning of the session, that matters. And so knowing that we had my leadership support and everybody in the caucus on board ready to help us shepherd this through was really exciting. We had, at that point met with House leadership as well, and we're so excited to learn that everybody really wanted to see its passage and recognized what an important initiative this was. So, the major components of Senate Bill 4 are, of course, the adoption of California's medium and heavy duty vehicle standards. That's going to be really important and exciting. There's really only 2 options for any state: either adopt the federal standard or adopt the more stringent Connecticut standard, which is really important for states like Connecticut, where we aren't meeting the mark with respect to these important air quality goals. State fleet electrification, really pushing, making sure we're not only talking the talk, but walking the walk. So making sure that our state fleet is electrified. Getting folks the ability to charge. If they want to buy an electric vehicle, making sure that there's charging infrastructure. Again, this is where we come into leveraging those federal dollars that pass through the Federal Infrastructure Act and making sure we have matching funds to get electric vehicle charging infrastructure across the state, not just in the concentration that we see in Fairfield County in particular. Making sure we get that those chargers into more rural areas, not just along our immediate 95 and 84 corridors as well. Having right to charge is really important, something that my colleague, Senator Haskell, worked really hard at negotiating with the realtors and the condo associations to make sure that folks who were living in these associations could install electric vehicle charging infrastructure if they so chose to do so. So that's an important component that previously wasn't allowed. Making sure that we expanded our cheaper program, which is the voucher program, to include electric bicycles, which we are finding is incredibly important to folks across the state. They're using electric bikes in a lot of ways as vehicle replacement, which is really exciting and different. And so we wanted to make sure that we included a voucher for electric bikes in there. And additionally, we were hearing from businesses saying, hey, we want to electrify our fleet. We recognize that there is long-term cost savings for us and that there's an important environmental component to this, but what can you help us with? How can the state of Connecticut help us? And so we wanted to expand cheaper to include business vouchers as well. Traffic signal modernization. We know that traffic flow plays a large part in carbon emissions. If you're idling, it's really bad for the environment and air quality. And so we want to get traffic moving and need traffic signal modernization for that. And then zero emission school buses, which is really exciting too, making sure that we're getting more of those on the road. I was excited to be at a ribbon cutting for an electric school bus, a DACO bus in Middletown. But these can be costly up front. We need to give folks time to flex on this, but we also know that we need demand to start to drive those prices down. And we don't want children sitting on school buses that are just, diesel emissions. We know that there's so many health implications to that in addition to the environmental health. So, and then there were some items on there that initially that we were really excited about that didn't quite make it into the final product. Things like the carbon budget, which was a really exciting initiative that we raised awareness around, and I hope we can bring it back. But it's like a carbon budget following Colorado, and in that if there's a project, a state funded project, looking at what the environmental impact of that project is and making sure that doesn't mean the project can't go forward, but what are the environmental offsets that need to be put in place to make sure that we're not worsening our environmental state. So that was really, if you can't tell, that's what I'm so excited about SB4. But again, these bills all become like my children, and I'm so excited about a lot of the successes that we've had, including an extended producer responsibility program on gas cylinders that we worked really closely, especially with Housatonic recovery, the materials recovery. Jen Heaton-Jones was a champion of this, as well as Senator Minor and Representative Gresco, who worked really hard to get the industry on board and make sure that we have a really great extended producer responsibility program, because those gas cylinders really don't have a good recycling program. And so now they will, and that's a really great thing for the state and for our waste, as we look to reduce waste and look for smart waste to recycle. Chlorpyrifos, that bill was larger going in. We wanted to address neonicotinoids as well and help our pollinators, but this is how legislation works. We're constantly modifying and collaborating and trying to figure out. We have to negotiate, and sometimes pieces get lost. And I fully intend to, if I should be reelected, I fully intend to work on that some more next session. But really excited we got a ban on chlorpyrifos in place, which is really harmful pesticide product. And then we, as Lori mentioned, we have some really great wins that were in the budget as well, funding for bikeways and greenways, additional money for our OSWA program, which is the Open Space and Watershed Grant. And so many of our land trusts across the state rely on those grant dollars, and they're always over applied to. We never have enough dollars, and we really want to be supporting open space. We also have dollars in the budget towards training programs for sodium chloride application. We know that this can be harmful for not only our environment, our soils, but for folks in their well water and what have you. And so we really wanted to move forward on a program that they do really well in New Hampshire and modeling that. So big thanks to UConn for helping us get that off the ground for private applicators and not just public municipal applicators. And we also have climate smart agriculture in the budget, which will incentivize farmers to use sustainable practices, which is very exciting. And of course, as Laurie mentioned, climate change curriculum and the Office of Invasives, both really championed by Representative Palm, who's such a wonderful champion on environmental matters. And we're so lucky to have her as House Vice Chair of the Environment Committee. So again, I mentioned there were some frustrating losses. I'd be remiss in not mentioning, some of the things that we didn't get across the finish line, but I'm proud that we have continued to raise awareness around the issues like rodenticides, particularly second generation rodenticides, which are really harmful to our birds of prey and to other wildlife like fox and even house cats. So we have to be really mindful of that. I'd like to see us work further on that. And unfortunately, polystyrene, try as we might, we continue to have issues, shepherding that over that proverbial finish line. But we'll be back at it most certainly in the next session, and hopeful for its passage because we have a really great group of advocates around that issue. So I've gone on and on and on, not giving you a word edgewise. Adam, I see you probably have.
No, Senator, thank you so much. I mean, it's astounding. You really touched on so many different issues and so much progress that was made. And it's a testament to you and your leadership on all of those issues. So congratulations on that. I'm going to go to first to a question from the online, which came from Robert Dickinson, which is you touched on a little bit, so I'm sure you'll be able to answer the question. Do you think Connecticut's doing enough for alternative transportation by building multi-use trails so that more people will bike for safe transportation?
I feel like the past two sessions there's been more of a focus than ever on bikeways and greenways, which is a terrific thing. We have a lot of towns who have Safe Street programs, including the town in which I live in, Guilford, who have been advocating for this at the state level to put more funding in there. I know I've got a big group in my district, the Shoreline Greenway Trail, who's been working hard at advocating for funding and really getting folks on the trails and ease of those trails, connectivity of those trails, but they require dollars and a real effort towards that. And again, I feel like we haven't had quite as much as a push in the past as we have in the past 2 years. And I say that not only from my short 4-year tenure here, but from learning from other legislators who have been around a lot longer than I have, saying that, this is really the first time we're seeing quite so much momentum behind this. So I'm pleased to say that we did get some dollars budgeted or bonded for that purpose. I think, do I ever think it's enough? No. I wish it were more, and we will continue to fight that fight and raise awareness around it. But I'm pleased at what we've seen so far.
That's great. And here's a question from a number of people, including David Satz, who's asking, are the DC chargers that are going to be installed along the highways going to charge more than just Tesla? Is it going to work for multiple cars or just for Tesla?
Yeah, in fact, over the course of the past year or so before session, I went out to visit a great Connecticut company, Juice Bar, with the governor, and was pleased at their production levels, of what the product they're putting out. And we really want to see more of not only Juice Bar's products along these alternative fuel corridors and across the state of Connecticut, but from others as well. But this is a way we can support a Connecticut company, grow Connecticut jobs, and make these chargers universal. So there's no, Tesla has their own plans in terms of charging infrastructure and installation. Certainly they work with the DOT on those things, but the chargers that we're talking about would be, in fact, universal chargers.
Great. And I've got another question from my friend Peter Millman, who's asking on the California emissions. What is it specifically that truck manufacturers and truck buyers in Connecticut are going to be doing differently as a result of this bill?
Yeah, so the California emission standards actually have 4 components, but we in Connecticut are looking to adopt 2. Most states who have adopted California medium heavy duty emission standards have adopted 1, which is the most popular, which is the advanced clean truck rule. And that requires a certain percentage of manufactured vehicles to be zero emission vehicles or alternative fuel vehicles. And so if you look at a chart for California, for example, their plan is in 2024, based on certain classes, maybe it'll be 5%, maybe it'll be 8% of that manufacturer's product have to be zero emission vehicles. And so for Connecticut, it's probably, by the time we adopt the regulations and stuff, it might be a little further out, not likely to be 2024. But what it is going to do is prompt manufacturers to know this is coming, know that they need to produce these vehicles. And as a result, I think we'll start to see demand to rise as a result of that. The other piece that Connecticut wants to adopt and is adopting through this new piece of legislation is the heavy duty low NOx omnibus rule, which would require an additional 75% reduction in NOx emissions. That's the nitrogen oxide emissions that is responsible for the harmful ground level ozones in new internal combustion engine vehicles. That for California is for the model years 25 and 26, and then another 90% reduction beginning in the 2027 model year.
Great. I've got a sort of changing topics a little bit. You talked earlier about the waste management issue and waste management. We've got the state needs to address the closing of the Mira plant in Hartford and pass waste management legislation, as you referenced earlier. Just curious, sort of what you see as solutions heading into this next year. What are Hartford leaders discussing? What are folks at Deep talking about? What do you see as some of the potential solutions?
Yeah, thanks for that question. So the Environment Committee had a piece of legislation that, we thought would have taken initial steps to address that. Energy and Technology also had a similar bill. And so we teamed up during the session and passed a piece of legislation to create a working group, something that we obviously need to focus on. Mira has been processing much of the state trash for many years, and obviously will need to be decommissioned in the short term. In the meantime, much of the waste that was going to the Mira plant will be exported, unfortunately, on diesel trucks, going to landfills in other states like Pennsylvania and Ohio. And so we really need to be mindful of that. We are talking about waste reduction strategies by way of anaerobic digestion, by way of recycling methods. We had a bill this year, again, one of my babies that didn't make it over the finish line, but on extended producer responsibility in packaging, something that another step that we can take towards waste reduction. And so the working group is really meant to talk about, the decommissioning of the Mira plant, something that I'm sure Representative Ritter has some thoughts on, but we're really excited to get together with folks from the city of Hartford as well as statewide who are focused on waste management and talk to them about what that decommissioning looks like. And then also talk about what methods we can use working with the Connecticut Coalition for Sustainable Materials Management, which is a group of municipal leaders from across the state who have some ideas on waste reduction and waste management, talking with them, speaking again with my energy and technology co-chair, with Deep, some environmental folks, and really talk about what we can do, what are the steps that we need to take in order to reduce waste and not be exporting our trash over state lines to landfills.
Great. Thank you so much, Senator Cohen. And as you mentioned, we're now joined by the Speaker of the House, Matt Ritter. I'm going to transition over to him. And I thank you so much for your leadership in the Senate and on the Environment Committee as chair in particular. A great banner year for you. So thank you so much again. So thank you. And we're now joined by Speaker Ritter. So I just wanted to give everyone a little bit of background. Representative Ritter is a lifelong Hartford resident. He is currently Speaker of the House of Representatives. He was first elected in 2010 to the Connecticut General Assembly, where he represents the 1st Assembly District in Hartford. He served as House Majority Leader for 2 years, and then as co-chair of the Public Health Committee, where he worked to address the opioid crisis, increase hospital fee transparency, and require more mental health services be covered by the private insurance market. Andrew Carnegie once said that no man will make a great leader who wants to do it all himself or to get all the credit for doing it. You are a leader who has really empowered committee leadership and your caucus, and you rarely get the credit you deserve. So I just wanted to kick things off by beginning to give you some credit for your great leadership. This year's major progress on the environment simply wouldn't have happened without you. You've accomplished so much this year. Your colleagues in the House and the leaders of Energy and Technology and Environment Committee did a terrific job, and just kind of wanted to open things up by thanking you and giving you an opportunity to tell some of the folks on the call today about the progress you made and how you made it, and what you think some of the key wins were and why.
Sure. Thanks, Adam. Thanks for the nice words, and nice to follow Senator Cohen, who really is a pleasure to work with. She does obviously a fabulous job upstairs. And Joe Gresco down in the House also did a great job as chair of the Environment Committee. I know that the senator was probably talking about a lot of the bills that we did. I'll touch on a few that maybe were different, or my perspective of what made this a really good environmental session. I think one of the first things is you got to give credit to the other side of the aisle. And people might go, oh my goodness, you can't say that. It's an election year, but I will. Representative Harding was an absolute pleasure to work with. I think Chairman Gresco would say that. Even if he disagreed, he didn't feel the need to go on for 9 hours and filibuster bills. He really worked, and I think was a valued member of our chamber because of that. And I think his own caucus listened to him on environmental bills. I think about Senate Bill 120, which we did on the last day. Anybody could have stood up and filibustered that bill and potentially killed it on the last day, right? We have unlimited debate, but yet nobody did that. And I think that shows you the committee worked really, really well, which is a testament to the two chairs. One of the things I'm really glad we got over, and I'm not sure if the senator touched on it, was the mandatory climate change. We've been doing that for 3 years. Representative Palm, I'm so glad it finally got done. It was done as part of the implementer. We were the only chamber to be able to pass that bill, oddly enough, over the last 3 years, but I'm really glad that was, in addition to Senate Bill 4 and 10 and others, that it got over the finish line. You know, another thing I would add, and then I'll take any questions folks have, Adam, if they have them, is sometimes when we do bigger bills, and it's not just the Environment Committee, it could be Public Health, it could be any committee, people stick things in them in one of the chambers that are very controversial, and they can really take down a bill or require further amendments on bills. The Environment Committee did not do that. They were very true to each other about that. If you add some unrelated or more controversial bill in a big bill, you can kill the whole thing. And I think their ability to stick to their plan, to tell members from other committees, don't mess with our bill, don't start sticking stuff in there, that allowed SB 4 and 10 to move. Because I've had situations as speaker where, and we've done it too, we send stuff up where it comes down and you go, why on earth is that in there? And that did not happen this year, which also helped a lot. So a key strategy, I think, going forward with any committee is be aggressive with what you want, but don't lose everything because you push too hard. And I think that was a good example this year.
That's great. Thanks. So I'm going to go to, there's a bunch of questions coming in from those folks who are listening here. So I'm just going to go to the first one here from Susan Eastwood. Were you able to address concerns about environmental impacts on of data centers this year? Or what do you think could be done on that issue?
I don't think it came up this year. I know there has been some talk about there are some types of generators that they use in Delaware, as I think, or has been used, or there's a new model. And I think they're looking and studying at that issue. That seems like a really good chance of progress where it takes away the emissions concerns. But I'm not sure that came to fruition this year. I'm sure it'll be an issue next year.
Great. Another question I had is our utilities here in Connecticut, like Eversource and Avangrid, seem to be turning their focus to renewable energy. What else do you think could be done to kind of encourage that movement in the direction of renewable energy?
Yeah, I mean, look, Connecticut has really done well on its own. We're a small state, right? So ultimately, this is going to take federal leadership. I don't want to get partisan on this call, but there's certainly a sea change federally about how we think about these things. All the federal transportation dollars that are coming into Connecticut give us a great opportunity to make true investments. And obviously, the Biden administration is making a priority on clean energy. You're going to need those federal subsidies. And also, you got to work with other states to accomplish a lot of this stuff. We're a small state. I'm glad we're taking steps that we are. But the reality is we in and of ourselves cannot solve it. Christine made a good point. I never thought in my life that the biggest issue environmentally would be trash. But it sounds like that's going to be the number one issue next year. Lucky all of us to talk about that. Yeah, we are closing the mirror plant in Hartford. It's time to do that. But agree with her wholeheartedly, we need other strategies. And I've had Republican and Democratic first selectmen and mayors call me more on that issue than any issue in the last 2 years. So it shows you that these tipping fees are hitting a breaking point at some point.
That's great. Any ideas? Or are you hearing any leaders in Hartford or at Deep or anywhere in the state or even outside the state talking about some of the big picture solutions to the waste issue?
Yeah, I mean, Christine mentioned it, right? I mean, it's this what's the right? I forget to always pronounce it correctly, but the digestive facilities that can take trash and do miracle things with it. But it's probably not one silver bullet. It's probably a lot of smaller strategies. Maybe there are some towns willing to take some facilities on, and we're probably gonna have to do all these things. Look, the other reality is that recycling has gotten a lot more complicated than when it started. People dump a bunch of stuff in there. We're going to need technology to better figure out how to separate so that it can be more profitable. But I know in Hartford, there's a growing, at least in my neighborhood, idea around composting. We have Green Earth or Blue Earth that's done a fabulous job. You see those green buckets and a lot of steps. Those are all the things that people are going to have to do to make it work. And we have to make it less expensive if we can. And just like the bottle bill last year that we passed, the only reason the bottle bill passed is because the state was willing to put money into it. The state had to put its money where its mouth was to sort of get over those private sector concerns and get the votes necessary to pass it. And I truly believe the same is going to be on recycling and trash. The state can't say, do this, and not be willing to put money into it. So the only way you're going to see a bill, I think, is with the state putting financial incentives involved.
Great. So I've done another question here. We're, as you know, we have a lot of retirements this year. We're losing some great leaders on environmental issues. Senator Formica, Will Haskell, Arconti, to name a few. Any sort of qualities you're looking for? I mean, that'll leave some vacancies in some key committees impacting environmental issues like energy and technology. Any sort of qualities, at this point that you're looking at? I know you just got done with the legislative session, but anything in particular you're looking for as you look to fill those types of positions moving forward?
Yeah, I think my rule of thumb for any chair, right, particularly a committee like energy, which has really worked well, traditionally bipartisan. I know Charlie and Ferraro and Formica and Dave worked really, really well with Senator Needleman. If you can't bring people together, if you go in and you want to yell and scream and not work with people, I'm not going to make you a chair. I mean, I expect you to go out of your way. Republicans are involved in screening. They see every amendment. They see every draft. Frankly, I don't like committees that I have to deal with. As you said, Adam, I like to give a lot of latitude and leeway. I don't want to be there the last 2 weeks of session doing your committee for you. And so, but the way that you're going to be successful is to work with other people. There are going to be bills, no question, that'll pass with all Ds with no Republican support, but that should be few and far between in a state like Connecticut, particularly on environmental issues or energy issues. So that's my rule of thumb. Somebody who is smart can learn it, because energy, everyone's got to learn it. I don't know if anybody really knows it going in. Even if you've been on the committee, I think it takes the leadership mantle to really understand as well as you need to. But you got to be able to work with other people, and also within your caucus. I have a caucus of 97 people. We got suburban, rural, urban, young, old, moderate, liberal. I got 42 individual caucuses. If you can't figure out that spectrum, you're going to struggle as a committee chair in the House Democratic Caucus.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for that. We've got a lot of questions, and during Senator Cohen's portion, we had a lot of questions as well on the electric vehicle issue and charging and trucks and all of that. One of the questions here is, from Svetlana Wasserman is, what is it going to take to pass a bill eventually to allow direct sales of electric vehicles? She can't believe it's taking so long. Any thoughts, initial thoughts on that? That was one of the bills that fell a little bit short this year and has been a perennial issue in the State House.
Yeah, it has. Aid and Dine's another one that comes to mind. My years, that has almost been there 7-8 years and hasn't found the right Rubik's Cube. Although I did take the bottle bill decades, and we solved that one last year. I can argue two ways, right? One is, I think the reason why it has not passed is because auto dealers, UAW and others have been able to make some arguments on one side. Another thing that has changed is how many more car makers are making electric vehicles, right? Volkswagen will be the #1 electric car dealer in the world in about a year. When this all started about 5-6 years ago, you only really had one game in town, which was Tesla. So I think they've lost some votes over the years because of that, because everyone's going to have electric vehicles in about a year or two, Ford, and they go through the normal modeling system. On the other side, right, where I think people support it is exactly that, which is, to your point, which is saying, why do we care? We want to get as many electric vehicles in our state as possible. We want to have that be the predominant market share. And so, yeah, it's not the normal system, but the environment trumps that, and that's more important. And it's just one of those things where some people prioritize that, and some people prioritize some of the other things, which is the existing system. And in the legislature, it's not Republican or Democrat, but it is true that we have not had the votes to do that bill in either chamber, it looks like, for a while now. And that could change when you elect new people, right? We're electing 30 new people next year, and they may have a very different perspective coming in than the ones that have been there for a while.
Great, thank you. Let's see. Any other things that you wanted to talk about? I know the budget had a lot in terms of the environment in it this year, in addition to all the sort of standalone environmental bills. One of them being the education component of climate change. Anything in particular in the budget that you might want to talk about or let folks know about?
No, I mean, I'm just most proud that it's a responsible budget. And I think that's why you saw 2 Republican state senators vote for it, is we did tax cuts, but we did it on the back end. Let me explain what I mean, because whether you care about environment or education, nobody wins when there's massive budget deficits. Nobody wins. Everyone's programs get scrapped. Human services, public health, all that stuff goes down. What we did is we said, the rainy day fund must be full. It is $3.3 billion. When I was elected 11 years ago, it was zero. Not exaggerating, it was zero. It's now $3.3 billion, which is the maximum allowed under state statute, which is 15% of our annual budget. It's the highest dollar value in the history of the state and the largest percentage of the annual budget in the history of our state. Number 2, we paid off almost $3 billion in our pension liability. 12% of the state's outstanding pension liability was paid in 1 year by this legislature. So once you do those 2 things, now we talk about tax cuts. Now we talk about spending. But if you reverse the order, that's irresponsible. So it's a responsible budget, which I think sets us up very well for the next biennium, where people are worried about ARPA funding running out, inflationary pressures, stock market pressures. I think we're going to be okay. And as long as I'm speaker, we're going to prioritize the front end before we do that stuff. Tax cuts that are responsible, not tax cuts as an election year gimmick.
Yeah, and I definitely want to credit you and your leadership on that issue on the budget. And I just use this quick opportunity to thank the governor as well. A lot of this would not have happened without the governor. And I know the governor has been committed to those responsible budgeting practices in addition to making progress on the environment. And I just wanted, he's not participating today, but he's been such a strong advocate on all of these issues, and just wanted to mention that.
And his administration definitely was very much in favor of SB 4 and 10, obviously, and that makes a difference when you have a governor willing to commit to that stuff.
Yeah, and I think one of those bills was his bills, right? I mean, so
correct.
Certainly
Yes. He didn't just push for it; he drafted it. Yes.
Right. Exactly. So,
right.
All right. So now I'm going to transition. We've got a question on something that your caucus has been doing a lot on, which is the equity issue. And this question is from Tanaya Taylor. Hopefully, I got that name right. Are there any bills?
Tanaya. Hi, Tanaya. How are you?
Tanaya. Are there any bills centering on equity, like compensation for communities that are directly impacted by climate change, such as Hartford, where people suffer from high asthma rates? Fuel cells are being built in Hartford, and fuel cells rely on methane, which increase environmental illness. So I think the larger question is, what kind of consideration is there on the equity, on the environmental justice issue for communities like Hartford, Bridgeport, New Haven, where a lot of this power is produced?
Yeah, I mean, there's tons of grants spread out in the budget. So there are things that you would see in smaller amounts and pockets that would go to urban areas and things like that. There's two things that I've prioritized as speaker where Hartford's done very, very well. One is park funding, Elizabeth Park and Keeney Park, which are just absolute treasures and jewels for outdoor recreation and outdoor space. Believe it or not, I'll have put in over $12 million for those two parks alone in the last 2 years. Batterson Park, which is about 5 minutes from Hartford, 10 minutes from Hartford on a bus, will be renovated this fall and open for swimming and recreation for the first time in a decade. That was a $10 million investment. So $22 million in state funds over the last 2 years for our parks. But the bigger change for Hartford, is not going to just be environmental grants. We have those, like I said, in the budget. You'll see those sporadically put out there. The big change we made for Hartford, New Haven, and other cities like that was the pilot formula, which was done last year. That gave Hartford an extra $26 million. That's why the mill rate is going down. And we're giving the city council the ability, with a little more budget flexibility, to make the investments they need to make.
Great, thanks. Here's a question from Justin Paglino. What do you think the prospects for shared solar are in Connecticut?
Yeah, I always try to answer what I can when something's a little not as familiar. It's not that I'm not familiar with it, but it's a better question probably for David or Norm than for me at this particular point in time. I was not involved in those discussions this year too much. I apologize for that.
No worries at all. No worries. And we'll maybe direct that to the new chair of energy and technology.
I'm sure he or she will be glad to answer that question for you.
Yep.
So.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. I know you have limited time today, and I know you need to take leave of us. So we really appreciate all of your great leadership. We thank you for it, and hope you have some time. Enjoy your time off here for at least a couple of days. So thank you again.
I'm going to coach baseball this afternoon, so not much time off, but I do appreciate it. And good to see Senator Cohen. I just see Senator Tony Hwang joined, and I know Joe Gresko was on earlier. So thanks, everybody. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, so we're now have the pleasure of being joined by Senator Tony Hwang. Senator Hwang represents Connecticut's 28th senatorial district, which includes the towns of Easton, Fairfield, Newtown, Weston, and Westport. He serves as ranking member of the Public Health, Insurance, and Real Estate and Planning and Development committees. He's also a ranking member of the Bonding Subcommittee of the Finance, Revenue, and Bonding Committee. Most importantly, perhaps, in 2015, 16, and 19, citing his environmental leadership, the Connecticut League of Conservation Voters has named Tony as an environmental champion on its scorecard, and he was named CT Legislative Champion Hall of Fame in 2017 for his strong leadership on the environment. And a particular note I want to call him out is he was the only state senator in the Republican side to vote for the Clean Air Act, which is Senate Bill 4. So wanted to begin by thanking you so much for your commitment to the environment and for your leadership this year, in particular on Senate Bill 4, in a context of a very challenging and divisive national environment. Wanted to make sure that you get the credit you deserve for supporting that initiative, and sort of turn it over to you to talk about sort of your perspective from a Republican legislator. So much progress made on the environment this year in Hartford and in such a short amount of time. Give us a little bit about your perspective. What do you think the most important wins were? And tell us what do you think might be on tap?
Thank you, Adam. And it's really nice to follow up with Speaker Ritter and Senator Cohen. And I really do appreciate the leadership style of both of them. it is collaborative. And to me, the environment has no partisanship issue. And I credit that with the people that are associated with the league, from the contemporary advocates like yourself, Adam, Lori Brown, Mary Hogue. You are constantly in touch with us and communicating across the aisle. And also a lot of credit needs to be given to the longtime advocates, the real legends of environmental advocacy, like Margaret Miner, David Bingham, Woody Bliss, Ken Bernard. These are individuals that I've interacted with that have continued to teach me that it is not a partisan issue. These are all leading Republicans that have reminded me that environment truly has no party affiliation. And I truly do believe in this, in the scheme of everything, that all of the accomplishments that we were able to accomplish this year is a tribute to the legacy of Julie Balaga. I cannot tell you how many times Julie Balaga has pulled me aside and reminded me that these are the right things to do. And despite the challenges of reactions and divisiveness, particularly on SB4, it is amazing to me that I was the only Republican in the Senate and the House to support this, because it really shows you how deeply embedded partisanship has become, because based on the merits of this dialogue and understanding that climate change and the impact that our pollution and transportation impact has on the quality of life. And as the ranking member of public health, we talk about air quality. There has to be a much more bipartisan collaboration. And I hope that if I'm lucky enough to get reelected again, that we will continue to strive to bring a bipartisan solution to everything we do in the environment, because at the end of the day, we need to have buy-in in order to implement this. So for example, SB4 and SB10 has very high thresholds and standards that we have to meet. But at the end of the day, if we as a legislative body are not united in a bipartisan effort to implement this, we're not going to reach those goals. So if there's anything else we do, this is a small first step. Even though it may be a bold first step and long time in coming, I truly believe that for us to truly execute and fulfill the challenges that we need to meet, we really do need to work together. And I hope that's one of the biggest goals that I'll strive for as I move forward in the legislative body. But it is based upon the leadership of the league and past legendary people that I've cited. You are the people that have fought for it for many, many years. And this year's success is a real legacy to those people that have forged the way for us.
I just want to mention, open with a comment, not a question. Kimberly Stoner wrote in, everyone breathes the air, Republican, Democrat, non-affiliated. So thank you for your leadership. So I'm going to go quickly to a question here from Ryan McCabe. His question is on an issue I know you're very involved with, Tony. What work is being done around cleaning up and maintaining Long Island Sound, including what's being done to update our sewage system?
Well, it is an important part. Our waterways are a critical element that retains the quality of life, but also, water is the basic element of our life. And we are celebrating the 50th year of the Clean Water Act. And the Long Island Sound is a major environmental as well as recreational part of our area in southwestern Connecticut, but also the rest of the state. And I'm very proud to be a part of the Long Island Sound Blue Plan, which was literally 7 years in the making, and it's been passed in the past years, now fully implemented. We're starting to collect data and some blueprint analysis of waterways and riverways that feeds into the sound. It really is an important element, but again, we need to understand the data points better and then be able to create policy with buy-ins from everybody that's going to be impacted. It's not just along our coastal corridors, but along the waterways that run up to it. It is a significant part. But the Long Island Sound Blue Plan is something that I'm very proud of, working with back to then Senator Ted Kennedy and Governor Malloy, who deserves some credit for advocating for this. So truly, again, bipartisan efforts work, because at the end, as I've seen some of the questions, the air and the water that we all share doesn't have a party. And it's a constant reminder that I've learned from Julie Balaga and people that I mentioned earlier. we have to do the right thing. And make no mistake about it, there's going to be significant challenges. So for example, in SB4, one of the challenges is that pollution and transportation pollution, as much as we implement it in the state of Connecticut and take on the cost and challenge of it, we need to have Massachusetts, we need to have New York, New Jersey implement that program as well. And we need to make sure that we are a collaborative regional effort. We haven't gotten to that, and I hope we get to that. But nevertheless, for me to cast my vote, it really is a testament to say, if we don't lead and if we don't take the initiative to do what we did this year, when are we ever going to start? So I think for me, that was a tipping point for me to say, look, we have to take the lead and initiate and encourage other states to follow. And so again, I'm very measured in my vote in SB 4 and SB 10, but I truly believe that it's the right vote. And ultimately, I hope we will have a much more bipartisan implementation of these important issues.
Thanks, Senator. Just continuing on the theme of Long Island Sound, and I know you just completed a really busy session, so maybe that's too early, but I'm wondering, as you look forward to 2023, what are you thinking about in terms of Long Island Sound and water? Are there any issues you might be taking up, to continue the progress that we're making in terms of cleaning up?
Well, there are a number of issues that also engage in federal and interstate type of dynamics. I think one of the issues is to make sure that pollution and waste is managed and that we protect our waterways. I think one of the least known kind of a major initiative on a federal level is to have the Deep Canyons area of the Sound be able to be registered as a national park. I think that's an incredible positive move, but also a bit of concern is that we also reached an agreement to dump waste deeper into the Sound. So I think for me, that is an interstate issue that is a point of concern. But I think the third area is as we initiate dredging to increase port utilization, that the toxic waste management needs to be addressed, as I follow on the point number 2. So there's a lot to do in the Sound. I'm hopeful that the blueprint that I initiated earlier will be a guide, but ultimately the correlation and the collaboration between federal and interstate dynamics with the shared Sound of Rhode Island and New York needs to be better coordinated. As we said, it's a national treasure and a natural treasure, but we're so intertwined with it, not only from a standpoint of eco, as we look at the New London port to be able to look at wind, but also for recreational and also for our fishing industry and aquarium farmers. It's an important part, an integral part of our lives and community. The Sound is really, truly special, and we have an important role to sustain it and protect it into the future, and something that I'm deeply committed to.
Senator, thank you. And before we wrap things up or bring things sort of to a close here, we've had a number of questions and just wanted to get your perspective on this issue. We've asked, obviously, the speaker and Senator Cohen, but what's your perspective on this shared solar issue? This Kenny Fosco, I may be mispronouncing the name, is saying he really wants to learn more about where folks are at on shared solar, because he thinks that more residents should have access to residential, and that's a way to achieve that. Curious what your thoughts are on this issue, or what you think the prospects of this issue might be moving forward.
It's a novel concept, and it's very interesting, and I would follow the line that it was not in the committee of purview, but I am concerned about it because we want to expand solar. We want to be able to share the cost because it can be prohibitive. But the challenge ultimately is an array of dynamics that are in play. And I don't know enough about it, but I would encourage that we advocate for solar. But I think the other part of it is affordability. I think we really need to look at affordability, but then I think another aspect that came up in debate was property rights and the shared ability to install that, impacting on shared communities. So it ties into, I know we have advocates in energy as well as an environment, but when you look at some of these policies, it crosses over into housing, crosses over into planning and development and land rights and land use. It really is a complicated issue. And I think as we move and delve into more of an expansive aspect, how we change how we function and live in the state of Connecticut, we're going to cross these challenges. And I hope, again, repeating back to what I said earlier, we need to have a bipartisan collaborative buy-in, because unless we do, you're going to have one side implementing and it's going to take a lot longer. And we've seen that in other states that have implemented without bipartisan buy-in, is that the implementation and the buy-in from a marketplace takes a long time and we don't meet our goals. So my hope is that if we craft plans, and I see that as a stark contrast to SB4, which I am the only one on the Republican side, versus SB 10. When you look at SB 10, it had a consensus passage and it also had a bipartisan passage in the House. I think the devil is in the details and the collaborativeness and the receptiveness to listening to all shareholder ideas and perhaps maybe the communications on SB4 and the weight of the complexity of the bill, as the speaker mentioned, has weighed down. And unfortunately, as we gotten closer down to the finish line of a short session, some entrenched ideas, maybe falsely, got to be the dominant conversation. I think I missed the opportunity for us to be able to sit in a room and collaborate and work with each other. And I hope that as we navigate the challenges of a new COVID environment, so there's just a lot we can do.
So Senator, just to wrap it up here before we turn it over to Lori, got a really good question. It was the last question that came in from Elizabeth Dempsey. She's noting that you were one of the only Republicans to support Senate Bill 4 and asking a great question, I think, for us advocates here for the environment. How do we do a better job or a more effective job to encourage bipartisanship support for the environment with Republican members? And I'm not sure if you have any thoughts on that. You know, what do we do well? What could we maybe do a better job with in our advocacy? And then with that, I'll hand it over to Lori.
That is a great question. It goes back to what I said in acknowledging the terrific leadership that you have within the league, the contemporary leaders like yourself and Lori and Mary Hogue, who is a constituent in Fairfield, who I talk to constantly, but also my respect for the people that came before us. They reminded me that truly, that environmental advocacy and long-term environmental protection and sustainability knows no party, and it shouldn't be a party line kind of a steadfast vote. And I think if we work harder and cultivate relationships and don't go to our corners, and look, we may agree to disagree, but I think if we see that disagreement and try to reach compromise and collaboration, I think we can succeed in a true bipartisan effort. Because as I said, for us to truly implement the necessary changes to protect and sustain our environment, we need to have both parties on board and communicate that to the general public, because unless the market buys into it and truly tips that to environmental advocacy in a sustainable long-term way, we're just fighting against ourselves. And that's really not the goal. We want to implement these policies and become a sustainable way that we operate and conduct ourselves.
Thank you, Senator Hwang, and thank you, Senator Cohen and Speaker Ritter. Lori, bring us to a close.
Great. Thank you, Senator Hwang, and also Senator Cohen. I know you're still there, and we truly do appreciate very wise and insightful comments of all three of our speakers today. I want to just remind you that we did capture quite a few. There were a lot of really great questions, and we will compile those and send them around so everybody can see what they were, and let the speakers also have an opportunity if they want to respond after this is over. And please do remember to go to our website, CTLCV.org, and there you can see the results of the full list of environmental issues that we tracked this year and how they ended. And also, I just learned that I had not realized that there was actually some funding in the budget for something that we had been tracking as a bill, the salt on the roads. And so that's wonderful. There's probably still some gems in there that we haven't discovered, but we'll be putting a full post-session summary up on our website fairly soon, but you can see all the bills that are out there. So with that, do not hesitate to email us, call us with any additional questions, thoughts, whatever. And we look forward to seeing you all next session. Thank you so much and have a good afternoon.